Hi there, my name is Peter Taylor. I am also known as the Lazy Project Manager, and I welcome you to this session. I've been in project management for way too many years probably, but I've learned a lot the hard way in many cases, and I wanted to share with you in this session some thoughts and some insights into my world of project management and see how that fits with your world of being personal and executive assistants. So welcome. In this session, what I want to do is explore some real world experiences, and I'm doing that with the help of two senior executive assistants and an executive who know this world. I mean, it's I want to make sure it is really relevant to your world, the world of the assistant, the executive assistant, the personal assistant. So what are we going to cover? We're going to cover generally three areas. We're going to talk about what we mean by a project in the world of the assistant. Project managers, project management, the profession of project management have definitions clearly, but I want to talk about it in your world, your language, your terminology, what you might recognize as a project or an activity of change. Secondly, if there's some jargon, we're going to bust that jargon. And thirdly, if there's some tools I can share with you, I will do that, because anything to help you is exactly what I want to try and achieve in this session. So let's move on right now, and we're going to move on with understanding exactly what a project is. But let's start with a good question. What is a project anyway? And we're going to do that by driving into some of the basics. Let's start by hearing from one of those real-world EAs about what it really means to be an executive assistant.
So the EA role for me, as I'm sure for many people, is not about just number crunching or filling diaries. It's more about being proactive and seeing what's going to be happening, what's going to come up, how that should be placed and prepared for. Basically elevating the role away from the term secretarial or administrative, but actually making an impactful difference to the business and partnering your exec on that.
So there we heard from a senior executive assistant a little bit about her thoughts, and I think the key thing that comes out there is being proactive. Being proactive is critical. A project manager, to be successful, must be proactive, constantly thinking ahead, looking ahead, anticipating. That is one of the biggest, greatest skills a project manager can have if they want to be a good project manager. Now, so I talk about projects in your world, and I think there are two key areas, and the first area is just looking after your executives. Now, a project, if you look at the actual official definition, it's a temporary endeavor that has a unique outcome of a product or service or something like that. And there are two key things there. One is it's temporary, and secondly, it's unique. So if you do something day in, day out, it's a process, it's an operation, it's repeatable. It is not a project. You might drive to work each day. Every journey is pretty much the same. It's a repeatable activity. It's not a project. It's not a unique outcome. It's not a temporary endeavor. Every day is different. We know that, traffic and weather, etc. But that's not a project. In your world, what could well be a project is looking after your executives. Now, yes, even they have repeatable activities. They need flights, they need trains, they need rooms, they need meetings set up, etc. But actually every day, every week, every month is completely different in some ways, the mix of what they do. And therefore, looking after executives, perhaps looking after more than one executive in the modern world of the assistant, is in itself, I believe, a project activity. The second area, which is perhaps more discernible or more obvious as a project, is what I call events. So the big things that come up that an assistant will typically get involved in, perhaps supporting or even organising directly. The events are, the major meetings, the quarterly business reviews, the mid-years, the kick-offs, the team meetings, the major client interactions, etc. These are serious projects because they are repeatable, but only in the sense of the fact they probably happen every year or in a cycle throughout the year. But actually each and every one of them is pretty unique. It's usually in a different location. It's usually with a different scale of attendees and different people involved, etc., etc. You can certainly learn from the previous one, and we will talk a little bit later on about the importance of lessons learned, but they are effectively projects. And I think that is, for me, the world of projects for the world of the assistants. So back to projects. Let's talk about the structure of a project. Now, there are many ways to describe the structure of a project, but again, following my pattern, keeping it as simple as possible, let's just stick to three. For a project, you plan it, you run it, and you close it. It's that simple. Okay, part one, phase one, first part of the structure of a project, plan. You plan in the following ways, typically. The first is really you've got to define the reason for the project in the first place. Why are you doing this? Now, that can be very light, very simple. It could be a direction from one of your executives, perhaps. But there is a reason for doing a project, and behind that reason is probably more detailed than you may necessarily come across, etc. I mean, in the world of real projects as projects, then you would have quite a robust business case justification for doing something, a lot of detail and information to actually define the purpose of the project itself. But you're going to have something. There is a reason for doing it. The second part is really capturing the scope and the expectations. Why are you doing this? We now know that, but okay, well, what are we doing? Because it's very simple to say we're going to do X, Y, Z, whatever it may be. But all right, well, what does that actually mean? Who's involved? What's the scale of this? What's the scope of this? What's the timeline for this? What is the expected outcomes? That's really important. The more you can understand that, and this is the area of asking all of those questions about, well, okay, you want this, but you want it by when, and who's it got to cover, and who's got to be involved, and who are the decision makers, and who will have the final say, and what if people disagree, and are we going externally for these resources? Are we using them internally? Are we using external rooms, internal rooms? Are we bringing food in? I'm talking in some examples here, but this is all about capturing the scope. And what is the expectation here? What is the preparation for expectation management? It's not an open-ended thing. Some of the trouble that people get into here is that they're given something to do, and there are not enough questions asked. I mean, respectful questions, not overly challenging, but clarity of what is required is really, really important. And then once you've got that, you can then estimate the time and resources to do this. I mean, it may be that you can handle everything, but if that's the case, that handling everything from your point of view has got to sit on top of you doing all the other stuff that you do on a Monday to Friday basis, or perhaps even sometimes into the weekend. So, even if it's just your time and therefore you are the sole resource, it has an impact on everything else that's going on. So estimating that time, estimating resources, and then developing a plan. Again, I mean, if you've ever seen some project management plans, they can be incredibly detailed, of course, and I'm not suggesting that you actually put anything like this together, but just even a very simple plan. It can even be, a simple, one-page bullet pointed, structure of what's going to happen in what sequence. I mean, that's still a plan. But if you just launch straight into things in the areas of projects, then it can run away with you. You can get out of control very quickly. So the structure of a project is define the reason for the project, capture that scope and expectations, estimate the time and resources, and then develop that plan. That's the way it kind of works, and that's the way it has to work. Okay, great. We've planned. Now all we have to do is run the project, make it happen. Really, this is the part from the start to the finish, if you like, of the deliverable of the project. So your job is to lead and motivate. Maybe that's just talking to yourself occasionally if you're doing all this on your own, but if there's other people involved, it is important to take that kind of leadership role and to motivate people and to encourage them. What are we trying to do? What is the purpose? What's the value? This is going to be really good. I value your help. All those kind of things come under that banner of leading and motivating. And then you've got to manage risks and issues and changes. It's almost certain that there's going to be some risks. It's guaranteed there'll be risks. Change, which is what the project is, change has by default risks. It is disrupting the normal activity. If everything was never changing, if there was no projects out there, there would just be general operation day to day ticking over. Everybody knows what they're doing, and it's very repetitive and very robotic. Change brings about disruption, and people are uncomfortable with change, particularly, and they've probably got their own, no, they probably won't. They definitely will rather have their own work to do, their own priorities, etc. So on top of this, you have to manage the risks, and if any of those risks become true issues, then you have to deal with that, and you have to be ready for changes. I don't have to tell you guys about changes, because I imagine your entire life is built on change, because that's the nature of the executive support world. You have to monitor progress. How are you getting on with this? Because you need to know that for yourself, but also other people will probably come to you and go, well, how's it going? Are we nearly there? Is it going to be on time? Is this going to happen? If there's a budget related to what you're doing, then you have to manage the budget. And you've got to communicate. You have to maintain communications with all of the stakeholders. And those stakeholders will obviously be your executives, but there may well be other people inside the organization, particularly when it comes to the kind of bigger stuff, the events, etc. Then there will be stakeholders. And you need to think about your stakeholders in a way that ensures that nobody's missed out. And you need to think about the quality of your communication to make sure what you are talking about is understood, received, and is, correct and accurate and of a high quality. And we'll talk about that shortly. And finally, we get to the end of the project. This is the close. This is where you wrap up the project in a controlled way. You don't just stop or forget about it. You do it in a controlled way. You learn and share lessons and experiences, even if it's just with yourself. And then celebrate. I mean, why not? It just depends what we're talking about here, but it's got to be worth at least a cup of coffee or tea or something like that. Celebrate in the appropriate way that's relevant to what you've just undertaken. This is the way that you finish off a project in a constructive and controlled way that brings about value. So there we have it. That's some ideas around the structure, or a simple structure of a project. Let's talk in some more detail. I'm going to pick a number of key areas here. I think we're going to need to talk about scope. Scope is quite critical to understand exactly what it is you are doing in this project of yours. Secondly, I think we need to talk about risk, because every change is risky to an organisation, and no matter what the scale is, there is some degree of risk, and therefore risk consideration, issue control, issue management, etc. is a key area. Communication, vital. Everything we do is driven by good communication, so we need to talk about that. We're also going to talk about prioritization. We have many challenges on our time and our efforts and our focus, and I'm certain that in the world of the assistant, that is no less true. The demands that come at you on a daily basis from every different direction is quite significant, I'm sure. And finally, we're going to wrap up by talking about lessons learned. So in these 5 key areas in the world of projects and project management, let's have a chat about those, and let's see if we can actually share some insights and some thoughts, and maybe some ideas and tools that you might be able to use in your future projects. So the first one, scope. What is it you're actually doing? I mean, if you don't know what you're doing, you can't do it, or you can't do it successfully. You cannot do it to any point of reality. I mean, you have to understand what is being asked of you, and the scope will come at you from whoever is directing you to do something, but it doesn't mean that scope is truly defined by just one person. For example, one of your executives may well give you a direction to put together, let's say, an event, let's say a team meeting, but there will be other stakeholders involved, and it's important to understand and have clarity on scope. But let's kick this one off by listening to an executive on his thoughts around scope and scope management.
I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with a few EAs in my time, and a lot of the EAs are part of teams who support a team of executives, and it's interesting that the EAs I've worked with got a lot of different skills, a lot of diversity, which I really valued. A lot of the executives have different needs. Some are not very self-sufficient, some are very independent, and I think it's helpful in that sort of team environment for the EAs and executive one-on-one talk about what the scope of work will be, so that they can basically bring to that working relationship the best of what they do. And I think if you have that conversation early on in the relationship, it really helps.
So there you have some thoughts on scope, and the number one message here is understand what it is you're being asked to do, have clarity over it, because it's all, being busy and being active and well, we talked about being proactive. These are all good things as long as you have a strong foundation of understanding what is being asked of you. If you don't, then you could easily be heading off into the wrong direction, wasting your time, wasting other people's time possibly, and at the end of the day, you're going to have to redirect and recover and return to where you started, and you've still got that whole bunch of work to be done. So clarity of understanding what the scope you're being asked for is critical to building a foundation for success moving forward. So think about scope, clarify scope, get clear insights, understand who all the stakeholders are who will input into that scope, and then when you have that clarity, get working, get cracking on. And the second area we're going to look at is the area of risk management, and for that we're going to listen to the words of another senior executive assistant.
It's also about risk management. An EA who knows their executives and their preferences can arrange travel, for example. What's their favourite airline? What's their favourite hotel? Do they prefer car hire over car service? They'll plan interactions to maximise the executive's time. Can they take the urgent call in the car whilst on the way to the airport? Also being able to suggest that due to, for example, the weather, that they change their normal routine. And of course, always being ready to react immediately to unforeseen circumstances.
So there we have some thoughts around risk and risk management. And it's really important to consider risks on anything that you do because it allows you to anticipate. Remember we talked about being proactive earlier on. It allows you to think about what might happen to the projects that you have underway. And I'm sure you do this on a daily basis. But to be clear, there is a difference between risk and issue, and I'm going to talk about that. In the world of project management, the humorous joke around this one is a risk is something nasty that you smell, and an issue is something nasty that you've actually stepped in. You know what I'm talking about here. The risk is something that might possibly happen. The issue has actually happened and you have to deal with it. And the way we approach risk and risk management in the world of projects and project management is that we first of all think about it. What could possibly go wrong between now and the end of our project deliverable? What are the big risks, the big potential problems that might happen? And that's typically in the area of, maybe a certain key resource disappears, maybe a piece of, a facility, a room isn't available, or whatever it may be. There is a risk. Firstly, think about those risks and make a note of them. And then secondly, you need to kind of prioritize them. It's a combination between, what is the likelihood of this risk happening, plus, or multiplied by, in fact, the impact of that risk when it does occur. So you could have something which, for example, that, let's think about it, your executive has to catch a train to London for a meeting, for example. What happens, what would you do if that train was cancelled? Now, the likelihood of that happening is quite low, but the impact of that happening is very high, if you see what I mean. If you think about it, the risk of the train being late is pretty high, and the impact is not as high because it's maybe a few minutes late, so the impact could be medium. Now, based on that combination, you can have real prioritization, if you like, or you can look at what are the big potential risks, and you can think about what would you do if that actually happened. And if it happens, it becomes an issue. It's an issue, then you should have a plan in place to deal with that. So that's the world of risk and risk management. And now we move on to the world of communication, and anything that we do in the world of projects and project management. We talk about the fact that a project manager will spend 70, 80, perhaps even 90% of their time communicating in some way. It's a huge part of the job, and I'm sure in your world communication is very significant as well. So let's hear about communication from a senior executive assistant.
EAs are in many ways the public face of the executives that they represent. Therefore, all communication and output needs to be of the highest quality, anticipating the needs of the business and the executives themselves, leaving them free to act as the leaders of the organisation.
So there you have it, the public face of their executives. It's a critical role. You knew that anyway, didn't you? But there we heard that quality of communication is key to helping these business leaders be successful in their roles. So, communication. There's so much you can read about communication. We spend so much time communicating. There are books and so much about communication that you can research if you really want to. But here's my simple guidance. This is the kind of level I kind of talk about when I do communication training and support organizations through workshops and so forth. Communication is about providing the right information to the right person at the right time in the right way. You have to get all four of those right. Otherwise, you have not communicated successfully. You can give the right information to the right person in the right way at the wrong time. They won't have listened to you. You know that. You go and try and talk to your executives when they're right in the middle of a rapid flight to the next meeting or whatever it may be, or they're focused on something else and critical. You know yourselves that they will not listen. You know it works the other way around as well. You can provide the right information at the right time in the right way, but give it to the wrong person, well, what have you achieved? Absolutely nothing. So you have to get all four of these correct. Right information, right person, right time, right way. That is the only way that communication works in a successful way.
The next thing we need to think about is prioritization. Priorities is an interesting word because when the word first came into the use in the English language, you couldn't have multiple priorities. There was only one word for it, and there was only one priority. It meant prior to everything else. That's the meaning of the word. So you could not have multiple things more important than everything else. It's kind of a crazy. In recent times, obviously, that meaning has changed, and we regularly talk about priorities. And let's listen to an executive now about what they think with regards to prioritization and the world of the assistant.
Thinking about EAs in teams, working for execs in teams, one of the other challenges I've seen is one of workload. Everyone's so busy, and the EAs will often struggle with conflicting demands from the range of executives. That's where prioritisation comes in, and I think it's very important for EAs to lay out on the table for their execs all the things they're doing and really ask for help to get that work prioritised. They can come with their proposals, but it requires a business context to say what should we drop and what should we keep going with, and often the EAs try and do it all, and that's God bless them, but it's not going to work that in the long term.
Wise words. Don't try and do it all. Understand what your priorities are, and I understand in your world that's probably quite complicated. If you're working for multiple executives, if it's a one-to-one relationship, perhaps those priorities are very, very clear. But if you're working for multiple executives who don't, let's be honest, don't always talk to each other, so you have to deal with the competing priorities sometimes, and you have to balance out those priorities. So when it comes to prioritization, here's a tool and technique which you might find useful.
So what is important? This is Stephen Covey talking in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think everybody knows this book. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. There you go. Interesting insight, but it's a very important one as well. And I want to share with you a simple tool that I've used in the past, right? And I try and share this with people when they're challenged by multiple demands on their time. So let's just have a quick look at this. The key to it really is to list things you have to do, short description, but it's a combination of the impact and the importance. Because the way it works is this. I'm going to use a project-based example, so bear with me on this one, but you'll get the idea. Let's say we have got a number of things to do, and you can see here we need to arrange the next team event. It's overdue. We need to reschedule a meeting with a supplier. We need to post the latest blog on project site. We've got to review the notes for a steering meeting. We've got to respond to requests to speak at an event, perhaps. Now, it's an example from my world, but you can make this your own. I've ranked them here in the sequence they came in. So the oldest one is the team event, which is overdue. That was the first one that came in, and the last one was a request to speak at an event. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That clearly is not their importance. It's not the priority, if you like. So let's look at this one. Let's look at the importance of this. So arrange the next team event, overdue. It's pretty important. I'm giving that an 8 out of 10, and this, whatever scoring system works for you. But I'm going score out of 10. So 8. It's pretty high. Reschedule the meeting with supplier, midpoint, nothing, kind of important, but not that important. So I'm going to give that a 5, right in the middle. The latest blog post on Project Life, well, less important. It's number 4. The notes for steering meeting, well, goodness me, that steering meeting is not too far away. Therefore, it's very important. That's a 9. And respond to request to speak an event. That is number 8. So now we've got a new ranking. We see number 1 is the 4th one, the review notes for steering meeting. We have a joint 2nd place for the team event and the speaking. We then have the other 2 listed, 4 and 5. So that's the importance. Now let's look at them on impact. What if we don't do it? Well, if I don't arrange the next team event, people have been pretty upset about that. I mean, I'm going to go for an 8. Reschedule a meeting with supplier. Well, supplier's a supplier, I suppose, but maybe that's a bit brutal, but I'm sticking that with a 5. The blog post, not too important. Midpoint again, 5. Steering meeting, the impact is, well, I'm going to walk into a meeting unprepared, which is never that good, so I'm giving that an 8. Request to speak at an event, really not impactful, really, so I'm going to give that a pretty low 3. So now we have another ranking. In joint first place is the steering meeting and the team event. Then we have the meeting with the supplier and the blog, and finally we have the request to speak. Now do the magic. What if you combine importance and impact? So you multiply them together to create a combined score. When something is highly important and highly impactful, it ranks extremely highly. And here we can see I've done that. I've put those 2 scores together, and I have a brand new ranking where it is all about the steering meeting, it's all about the team event, and then moving on to supplier, the request to speak, and the project site. So you can see, using this kind of technique, things keep changing. It's based on your thought processes, and I don't think, just because it's the oldest doesn't mean it's the most important. It may do, but it's not necessarily most important. Why hasn't it been done if it's really important? And secondly, what's the impact of not doing it? And this is what we get out of this. We kind of see there's kind of two groupings of ranked activities here, 2 high ones and 3 low ones. And potential actions here, and this is an exercise I use in one of my workshops, could be to delegate low ones to someone else in the team who would enjoy the exposure of writing a project blog, for example. Is there someone else on the team who might be a good presenter who could speak at the next event? I said, move this into your world, into what it is that you deal with, but you get the idea, hopefully. And for the high level items, can you get some help? Can someone review the steering meeting notes for you? An objective view often helps, for example. What about next team event? Overdue? So why not find someone else who might really enjoy putting that event together, perhaps with a lower level of your personal involvement. So I hope you can see this kind of balancing of importance and impact really helps you look at your priorities and make decisions accordingly. I understand your world, everything is expected of you. You're supposed to do magic, but the reality is you can't, and it's important you don't overstretch yourself, and it's important that you prioritize in the right way.
Okay, which brings us, towards the end of a project, and I think one of the most important things that can take place at the closure of a project, and it's probably one of the hardest to do as well. I know that, because there are demands on your time constantly. It's, in the world of project management, we know we don't get to finish a project and then have a little gap and then start another project. It doesn't work like that. In your world, it completely never happens, I'm sure. But the area of lessons learned, taking some time to consider what actually happened and what could possibly be improved next time around. Because whilst I said right at the beginning of this that actually a project is a temporary endeavour with a unique outcome, not repeatable, projects are similar. Projects have a commonality between them, and therefore learning what went well and what didn't go well and improving things is always important. It's important in life, full stop. So in the area of lessons learned, I mean, the thing I always talk about is we have evolved as an unbelievably successful creature on this planet, and we've reached heights which is just astounding. And yet, let's say I find ourselves in that meeting room with the flip chart, with the whiteboard, with the marker pen, and you pick up that marker pen and you write on it and it's run out. And how many times do we not learn lessons because we put it back and it's there for the person who comes along afterwards? We don't pick it up and throw it in the bin. We don't go and find a new one. And sometimes it's really embarrassing, and I've done it as well, is you pick up that same pen later on and you try and write with it a second time and it hasn't been magically refilled with ink. So sometimes we just find it very difficult to learn things and improve things ourselves. But in the area of projects, it's really important, and I think this is something you should focus on quite strongly.
This is a wonderful statement, if you like, from Donald Rumsfeld about talking about known knowns, unknown knowns, known unknowns, and any combination of knowns and unknowns that you could possibly want. The point about it actually makes sense. If you put it into a simple sort of quadrant or Boston matrix, then it makes sense. There is no way that you necessarily know everything that went on during a project delivery, during an event activity, or anything like that. There are things that went on that you really should understand, and the approach of learning lessons is all about that. There's a definition of insanity. I mean, insanity means doing the same thing you did in the past but expecting different results. Why would you? If you just run across the office right now and walk, bash your head into a wall and it hurts, if you were to turn around and do it again 5 minutes later, why would you be surprised it doesn't not hurt? I mean, in fact, it's gonna hurt you yet again. I'm not suggesting you do that, by the way. Please do not run out the wall. I'm definitely not encouraging you to do that. But my point is, if something didn't work last time, you want to change it so that hopefully next time it does work, and that really is the essence. And why do you do this? Because you want to be better. You want to learn. You do not want to be this sort of project manager, an organizational leader dedicated to the imposition of order upon chaos, even if chaos is perfectly happy with the status quo. The other thing that we talk about in project management is project manager is a verb, not a noun. It's a doing word. You have to be active as a project manager. And let's just wrap this one up with hearing from a senior EA about the final point of the value of being proactive.
So the thing I rant and rave about the most is probably proactivity. We all know that we could sit there and coast and be told what to do, but actually the reality is, to be a really effective executive consultant, is to be proactive, to see the next step, to understand what your manager may want or need, to have proactively gone out and found out that information, to brief them, from little things all the way from travel arrangements all the way through to have they got bios for all the people that they're going to be meeting necessarily or expected to sit next to at that table at dinner. But being proactive and making sure you've gone out and made sure that they're fully prepared for that role.
So there we are, we're back at the high level, if you like. One of the greatest things a project manager can do is to elevate themselves, to look down and at what's going on, to consider. The problem is if you get too involved in the detail and the weeds, etc., and with the day-to-day drive to deliver everything and anything and everything, and then your problem is you have no foresight, you have no visibility of what might be coming at you, and therefore to elevate yourself is critical, and to be very proactive in what you do is critical as well. If you think about projects, we need to look at them, we need to start them in the correct way. We need to have the right foundation for project success. We need to have that discipline and control. In projects and project management, we have methodologies, etc. But you just need a simple process in your world to do what's important for you to do at the start of a project, whatever a project means to you. What is important to do during the running of that project? How do you track progress? How do you communicate? How do you prioritize? How do you manage those risks? All those things we talked about. And then finally at the end, how do you finish it off nicely and neatly and tidily and correctly? I mean, it's a matter of stopping the project in a controlled way. And it's important to learn some lessons. There are learning points from every experience, every day. So just take in, even if it's just half an hour or so, just to think and reflect on what we want. Get input from other people if you possibly can, and it will definitely help you become more successful in the future. And that's it from me. I am hopeful that this has been in some way useful to you. You can find out more information about myself at my website, www.thelazyprojectmanager.com. I would be interested to hear from you if that's something you'd like to do, because I'd love to hear more about your world and what you think about projects and project management within your world, and have I covered the kind of issues you commonly come across, or have I missed something completely? Have I misunderstood something completely? So please do reach out to me through that website or on LinkedIn, and I hope that you are even more successful than you are already in the future when it comes to project management for assistance. So thank you very much.